Hello, my name is Enda Murray. I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Ciarán O Maonaigh, director of Farewell to Hughes, and the presenter of the film, Brendan Gleeson. Ciarán, August Brendan, to fault your road, you're very welcome.
Thanks for having us. Great to be here. Great to be there.
Ciarán, dus, Ciarán, as Gweedore Donegal, a will to. On road to Ruggle Gaelga?
Yeah, Gaeilge Woohusma, yeah, Irish born, bred, and stuck in me, whether I like it or not.
So, agus an isis tá tú a gobar stúthór sa TV. Céir an scéal, chunar sa fórtú an start san tionscail seo.
For my start, no, my gobar le Kirsty Telefish agus scanan le Ovi Gavi legus a séan. So Harva fihi bien inis agus warchud dan telefish agus na scanan at a jantagum to jant runnima da TG Cahariad lehiji sé Maonaigh agus scanan.
Yeah, so chonig me on sé Maonaigh of Steve Cooney, a good Australian. Yes, yeah, we don't get RTE over here, but by some wonder of modern technology, we can get TG Cahar. So there you go. Hey, Ciarán, can you tell me how did this film come about?
Well, this film for me came about when I got a call from Liam and Brendan here and asked me could I get involved in making this film about Hughes. Hughes was a pub on Chancery Street behind the forecourts in the middle of Dublin here, and it was a pub that I frequented a lot in my youth. I'm a fiddle player as well as working in TV and film, and I suppose I knew the place, and the lads are both fiddle players as well, and they knew that I knew the place, so that's probably why I got the call. But I was delighted to get the call, and we were there to essentially make a film about a pub, which meant an awful lot to us, and especially so Brendan, because Liam O'Connor, the director of the Irish Traditional Music Archive here, asked Brendan what would he like to make a film about, and he chose Hughes's because it meant so much to him.
Right, and I was going to ask you, Brendan. You're originally from Dublin, but you learned the fiddle and the mandolin. Now, where do you think that love of music when you were growing up? Where did that come from?
It took a while to arrive, really. It was funny because people like Gay McKeown, who is in the documentary, The Piper, lived about 4 doors down from us in Artane. Across the street, I went to school with his brother. But it was unusual in Dublin then to be involved in Irish music, and certainly there was none of it in our family. I had my father's from Tipperary, and there used to be a lot of singing and songs and stuff like that of all sorts. Clancy Brothers and all that carry on would have been big, but the music itself had no real. There was none of it in the house, and I remember in my teens, there were a few things that happened where I touched upon it, and I kind of began to understand somewhere very deep down that it was a kind of a gateway to a particular sensibility in people. There was a kind of generosity of spirit. There was great crack, great fun. And it was an intriguing, magical sort of a thing. I had gone down to the west of Ireland at one stage to see some friends of mine, and I was hitching, about 15, hitching out in the absolute lashings of rain, and sleeping in a hay shed and all the usual stuff that you have to do when you're 15. And I remember thinking I could hear the pipes crossing this small little bridge, and looking around, and it was just, I began to understand what the sound of the pipes were, how it emanated, what the associations with it. And later on then, when I was about 17, there was a mad festival down in Tralee, and I tried to escape out of it. It was just madness. It was good fun if you were at it, but it was craziness. And I went in the back of a pub, and all the older folk were on a flag floor doing sets and playing. There was a box player and a fiddle player sitting down on these barrels out, as if all the older people in the town had found a little oasis at the back. And they called me over, and I had a hippie guitar with like all green paint on it and everything. And they said, sit down here, sit down. And I said, I can't, honestly, I can't stay with it because I didn't want to be ruining it. And he said, how do you learn if you can't play? He says. And so I sat down, and I had a kind of a connection with the older people, and there was a grace about the way that they were moving around the place and pure fun. And so that kind of really, I was mad. My grandfather had played a mandolin, but it was kind of parlor music, singing for songs and like all that stuff. Not particularly Irish music, but so that's where I kind of gravitated towards. I got a mandolin, and that started the love affair then.
Great. And Ciarán, is there music in your family? I know Gweedore, I was up there 1977 for the Oireachtas, and I think, a long time ago. But Clonard, those guys from close to Gweedore?
Yeah, there's a lot of music in Gweedore. There's the lads from Clonard. There's the Brennans from about 2 miles away from me. And Enya from that family as well. I suppose closer in my own family, I'd be related to the ones from Alton, and my aunt Mairead and my uncle Frankie from my mother's side. So on my mother and father's side, there's music, and I learned from my grandfather Francie. And Francie and Baba Brennan would have been the 2 music teachers in Gweedore. So Baba Brennan be the mother of all the Clonard gang, and mother and sister of the 2 uncles who were great crack. Sadly passed away. But anyway, very musical area. I think somebody came up with the fact that if you drew a compass around Gweedore and the 10 miles around there, that something like 50 million records have been sold in that area. That includes Daniel O'Donnell. And they probably take the bulk of them. They probably take, but there's a lot of records that come out of that area, and it's steeped in music, and people have trodden a path in Irish traditional and folk music since the early 70s, and it's there's a pathway there, and there's also they're local people, and you can access them, and it was a very privileged place to grow up.
It's magical. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's absolutely stunning. It's like nowhere else even in the country. But I didn't realize it was the Motown of Ireland either.
We'll have to fact check some of these figures here on. Tell us, Brendan. Tell us about the link with the Irish Traditional Music Archive and how that intersects with the creation of the film. So not many people here would know about the ITMA in Australia. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's one of those things that Irish music was under threat. Say by the time the 50s came, it was really kind of on the way out in most parts of the country. But there was a kind of resurgence, and there was an odd kind of attitude at home about it. It felt in some way that it was in the way of modernism and all that stuff. And there was a certain, it was stayed and a little bit felt that time was past. And then some remarkable people began to take steps to bring it back. And having the ITMA, like I became aware of the ITMA when Nicholas Carlin was doing it. It's the music archive, and suddenly people started taping stuff and recording stuff. People like Ciarán McMahon and all these people, and understanding what beauty was being lost, just casually being dropped, while it was still alive here in a way that it wasn't in much of Western Europe. Those traditions going back that long. And so all of this stuff happened, this archive, and my first meetings were with Nicholas. And when Nicholas passed the baton recently to Liam O'Connor, who's produced this thing, it was an incredible sort of new turn it took, because the outreach has suddenly become so much bigger, and like proof the pudding is the fact you're down in Oz and this thing is coming down to you. And fair play to you, by the way, and thanks very much for screening it. Like the outreach with traditional music generally is absolutely phenomenal. Everywhere I go, like I go to the States quite a lot, but anywhere I go, you can find a session somewhere. It's crazy. Whereas before, when I started 30 years ago, I used to hate it. My big thing was when the iPod was invented, I could bring all the music with me. Now it's everywhere. And the outreach, the ITMA, the music archive has continued to build, but also this outreach has happened. And Liam came up with the notion that he tried to contact people in different facets of the arts and see what their connection with the music was, and to bring maybe some of their, skill sets or whatever it was, their experience, the way that they express themselves as part of this outreach, so that it would open it up in a wider, broader way. And so I was kind of thinking for a long time, what could I do? I didn't, because I didn't feel I had much to contribute musically as a musician particularly. So it was more about, I said, I'd love to make a film or something. And just when I thought about it, there was problems with a local pub, Cobblestone. They were trying to cut it down, and would have been the last vestige of music here. And in the meantime, Hughes had just closed down during COVID. Martin had decided to move on. So I said, geez, why don't we, that could be an archive. So it was a love letter to the thing, from where I'm kind of, it's my territory much more. I feel much more at home in kind of understanding what's there. And Ciarán, I said to Liam, if I can get Ciarán, that's what I want to do. Because Ciarán's work in Ciarán O Maonaigh and other things, he's done films for 20 years. He's unique in my experience in the way that he can get into the soul of the music within a session. And I remember talking to John Boorman, even the great filmmaker, years ago, about how on earth can you film a session? Because once you start putting cameras in, you tend to ruin the spontaneity of it. And it has to be, it's like, how do you film jazz? It's like, it's difficult to get in the inside of it without it becoming a performance. And Ciarán has found a way into the soul of the music, possibly because he's coming from such a deep place in it himself. But that Steve Cooney thing, again, one of your own and one of our own. And to get into the soul of that man in the way he did in that place was what was required. There's something extra required when you're dealing with Irish music or any kind of real soul music like that. If it's from the outside, it leaves people out. So that was the idea, get inside the pub. And when Ciarán said, yeah, we was overjoyed. It felt we're halfway there. It's like good casting. But in terms of once the director has that degree of insight and technical ability, it was a joy from there. And to be honest, the whole making of it has been a joy. And it kind of did what we wanted it to do. It's now there for anybody to access, even though the pub itself is gone. It has an ear smell. It has a kind of it's left its mark after its passing.
Yep. Ciarán, what you've got a great recommendation there. Good rap from Brendan. But what are the tips to getting inside the session? Any tips for? Is it a sound recordist thing, or as Brendan said, is it just understanding the music? What draws you to the music?
Well, what draws me to the music is that soul thing, that thing where you get lost in the music, that thing where I'm like, I play the fiddle. I've played the fiddle all my life, and I love being in a session because it kind of it comes from the heart. You're playing music, and you can get lost in other people's company, and you might not have spoken words to them, but it's a language where you where you inherently know these people, and you're in a circle with them, and it's about feeling on the inside. And if you could, it's like filming is an artifice. So you're plonking lights and cameras and microphones and cables in amongst these people. And sorry, can you move there? And sorry, and
Yeah.
and the last thing you want that you're able to do then is turn around, right, lads, 3, 2, 1, action, and you're meant to feel like you're on the inside. So it's trying to. You can never remove that artifice, but it's trying to lessen its impact so that the people on the inside can feel like they're on the inside. That if they recognize someone, maybe that's my main role, is that they know me because I play with them. If I go and put them at ease, try and make sure that the technical stuff is happening in a way that keeps people calm and not getting them too uptight, because there's always time pressures and money pressures, and time is money and all that, and getting so it's trying to lessen the impact of those things on the music, and trying to get the musicians to perform as if there was nothing there. And it's all a compromise, but you do your best.
Could I just say that as well, in terms of what Liam allowed to happen, we kind of went with this idea that we would take as long as we needed to do it, that the program itself would be as long as it needed to be, and no longer and no less. So we didn't have any commercial pressures with regard to doing with sponsors or doing with anybody. We did it off our own bat. There was a budget from the that was had a certain limit to it, but Martin was a big, who owns Hughes, was a big contributor to it, because the pub was still there. I rang him the first thing and I said, look, would this be a good idea, or would you, would it be a pain in the face to open up what you thought you'd moved on from? And he was very, very incredibly cooperative. So we went into the pub itself for 5 days, and it relieved an awful lot of the budgetary pressures on everybody. There was enough, we were given enough space to do it. Obviously, you have a certain limitation to get anything done, but we did it within it, and we never felt as if we needed really to go back. And then it ended up being an hour, which is an awkward space, but it's because we're not going to do it and start cutting it back in for some commercial idea. We wanted it to be what it is, and it's now the first thing we got it into the archive. So all there, and all the extra footage and all that is part of the archive, so that's saved. And then just trying to make it as palatable and enjoyable and entertaining for people in whatever length it has to be. So it's a slightly awkward length for commercial reasons, but for us, it is what it is. And I love the idea that we were allowed, for once, an artistic endeavor was allowed to flourish on its own terms. And that's, I think, what's really, I think it smacks of it. I think you can feel it in the film, to be honest with you.
I was going to ask you, when I was watching this, I was thinking of growing up in Drogheda, and there was a pub there, Carberry's, where you go to. It was an early opening. It was down the docks. It had the dockers and the guys coming in from the cement factory early in the day, and then a different crowd, and run by an elderly lady, or a Bonnetty who was like a mother to all of these young guys, punks and stuff, and it's closed. And I suppose, looking at your how you regard Hughes as this place that was sacred, in a way, I suppose that there are other places in Ireland which had pubs, which may be due to the social, that, like we did things in Carberry's we couldn't do at home because it was a safe space for us. I was interested, that you said it was a place where you could go to get refreshed, what I was thinking, is this something that's gone now and is in the past, or would you see it as just how life is? It changes. You got to move on. Is there a Hughes for the next generation?
Remember, we were talking to the women's session, and they were kind of really refreshing, because they were started saying, no, there is another place up around here, or they kind of felt like there was no kind of doom and gloom about them, and there was no doom and gloom broadly in the film, because we felt Martin, for a start, as the musician he was going off in his own direction musically. So everybody felt there was a kind of a timeliness to its moving on. Whether like the pub scene has completely changed in Ireland, really, it really has, as a social hub. It either needs to reinvent itself or find new ways of happening. I think the music is so strong that people will find ways of getting spaces in which it can live like that. It is different from home. And even in the 50s, I remember going down to Clare first when I started into the music, and they'd talk about the house sessions were always there. And then the priest kicked them out because they thought they were getting too close to the women, and the usual stuff. And the priest then set up the ballrooms, and then they took a cut. And so a lot of people really resented being kicked out of the houses, but they were house parties then. And then the pub kind of took as this kind of surrogate ballroom where you could have a pint. And it grew kind of organically like that. Now, I don't know what the next manifestation is going to be, but I'm fully optimistic that people need this. You know, it's a bit like cinema. And everybody knows cinemas are under pressure now. And after COVID, nobody wanted to get into a big space with everybody. There are always things, then there are series box sets, and everybody says the demise of the cinema. I feel confident that this different thing that happens in a communal space where people are seeing a piece of art, which is what this music is, and engaging in it in a way that's proactive and not just purely passive. It's kind of, there's something that happens in that space. I don't think people will let it go. I think they'll find ways of doing it. I'm not sure exactly how that will happen, but it'll possibly not be the old pub session that we had, or it could be that and something else. I don't know, but I wouldn't think doom and gloom. It's too many people are accessing it, and too many people are feeding off it a little bit for it just to be, you know, I don't think we're back in the 50s.
Brilliant. I could talk. I could talk to you for many more hours, but we've got to go. So Ciarán O Maonaigh, thanks a million for spending the time, and good luck with farewell to Hughes, and yeah, and Ciarán O Maonaigh, Slán agus Bannock.
Ciarán O Maonaigh.